Hi green lovers! Well, I planted my first tomato about a month ago and now it is time to trellis them. This is the very first tomato plant. I believe it's an ananas noir, and you can see how big it has grown, and not just the tomato plant, the plants around it have grown as well. This here is comfrey and it's starting to bloom, and comfrey is a wonderful plant because it is what's called a dynamic accumulator, and its roots go really deep and it pulls those wonderful nutrients from deep down in the ground, brings it up to the leaves. And so I use these in my compost. So I'm just gonna remove some of this so that my tomatoes have a little bit more breathing room. There we go, that's a nice bunch. And I'm gonna put it in my worm tower here. Ooh, look at all those bugs. So I just use these little worm towers. If you come right around here, you can see them. So I bury them here and I just deposit food scraps and things like that. And I put another pot on top of it. And what that does is it lets the worms come in and out. This has got a lot of holes in it, and the worms move freely in and out. And then when I water it, the worm tea flows into the soil. So it's a really good thing to do in a raised bed garden, is to make a worm tower. But back to the tomatoes. All right, so we're gonna trellis this tomato plant and come up a little bit closer so I show you how it looks. Now you can see a lot of foliage has grown, and this here is a sucker. Now these suckers can actually develop into entire new plants. If I break it off and put it in a glass of water, in about 10 days this will develop roots. But basically I want to keep at least the bottom 12 inches or so kind of off the ground, because if it scrapes around on the ground here, it just gets subject to fungal diseases, insects crawl onto it. It's just not a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the leaves from about the bottom 12 inches. There you go. I'm going to let two of these suckers continue to grow. I'm going to remove some of these others. You can see one that's starting to come out here. I'm going to remove that. And I think this looks just about right. So this is good. I'm going to go ahead and proceed and do that for all my other tomato plants, and we'll be right back, and I'm going to show you how I do the Florida weave to trellis my tomatoes. Okay, we're good. All of the tomatoes are cleaned up. Let's go ahead and get started on trellis. Well, the basic concept of the Florida weave is you have two posts, like the one over here, and then there's another at the far end, and in between those two posts you've got your tomato plants. I've got 4 tomato plants in this 12-foot long bed, and I use twine to weave in and out of the tomato plants. So basically what you do is you tie the string onto one end, that T-post right there, and then you pull the string around this tomato plant and alternate it on the other side of the next one, and so on and so forth. So it creates this sort of weave pattern. And then as the tomato plants grow, you start adding new lines of thread. And with the next line of thread, you do it the other way around. So if you were coming this way around for the first one, for the second one, you come the other way around. So basically, it kind of holds the tomato in a compact manner. It holds it in the middle. And this way you can grow the tomato all the way up to the top of the post. And I like to use between 6-foot and 7-foot tall posts. And I try to keep my tomatoes around about that size. Once they get past 6 feet, I just kind of let them droop over the top and do their thing. So up to 6 feet or so is how far I do my Florida weave. And I like to keep the distance roughly about 4 inches apart. I feel that that gives me the maximum stability for the plant. So now let's go ahead and start our weave. All right, so in order to do the Florida weave, you need to have 2 posts. So if you pan over there, that's one T-post, and then if you go all the way to the other end of the bed, this bed's about 12 foot long. I've got 2 T-posts, one on each end, and the tomato plants are planted in a straight line. And then, in order to keep the stability of the plants, I also use a T-post in the middle. Without this, the plants just tend to get heavy and they kind of sway either that way or this way. So this really helps keep that in check. Now to hammer in the T-post, I've got this handy dandy tool. Looks like a tube, and you put it on top of the T-post and you ram it in. It's really heavy and it's a little bit pricey, but for me it was a good investment. You can always use a hammer, which should be able to do the job just fine. But I like this. It makes it a little easier on me. So I like to put it on top of the, ooh! This requires some strength. But I put it on top of it, and then I put it in the ground here, and then I hammer it in. This is loud. That's about it. There you go. Now let's go ahead and weave our string. All right, so I use this twine. I got this in bulk. This is a boatload of twine. I can go around the world once or twice probably. That's how much twine there is. Just kidding, but you get my point. And it's kind of a nylon thread. And I do try to reuse it as much as possible, but it's really, really strong. So it works well. And you zoom down here for me. All I do is knot it up on one end. I go as low as possible, so maybe 3-4 inches off the ground. That's my starting point. And then I just start to go around the tomatoes. So let's take this with me. So this tomato gets it here, and then as I reach the next one, it goes on the other side. So you see how I did that? So I've woven it from that end to this end, and now I'll go ahead and continue this with the next tomato. And then when I come to this end, I just tie it on the other end. Now you do have the option of twining this around and continuing to weave in the other direction, but what I found is that over the course of time, these strings tend to loosen up a little bit. So if I keep them short, there is less of a chance of that happening. So I like to keep each string separate from each other. Again, this is something that I kind of learned the hard way. So I'm going to start the next level here. And I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to twine this in the opposite direction. So if you come over to this tomato plant, which is the first one from this side, you see how this string is going on this side? Well, this one is going to go this way. Now, if you see the distance between the strings, I like to keep them between 4 and 6 inches. I find that that's a good way to keep the plant stable. Now what I did as I went around the post over there in the middle is I twined it around it a couple of times. And I'm going to do that for each string. I missed the first one, but I'm doing it from the second one onward. And that will keep all of the posts aligning all of the tomatoes perfectly. So that's how you do the Florida weave, folks. So I prune these tomatoes. I like to keep roughly about 2 to 3 suckers on the tomato plant. That's about it. I don't let it go crazy, because the Florida weave method does not work if you let your tomato plants just sort of put out as many suckers as they want to. So I'll stick to maximum 3 suckers, and I will let them all grow into main stems. That's it, folks. I hope you learned something new. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you could give this video a big thumbs up, it sure would help it get to a broader audience. And if you want to go check out how I planted my very first tomato plant, I have some secret tips in how to make those things grow really, really well. So check out that video. I'll put a link to it right here. And until next time, live green and love your greens.